episode of Rugby with Pads. Hope you're all doing well and that week 3 favoured you. It certainly did for me in some regards, but in other regards, I had a bit of a tough time, but we'll go on into that another day. It was, you know what, I'm just going to come out and say it. What the hell happened? There were so many crazy scorelines. I mean, 70-20 for the Broncos, the 24-28 mess that was the Chargers. The Chargers didn't charge for once. It was crazy. There were some great games and even better fantasy performance. So this is Monday morning. We are trying to be one of the first shows to get you a waiver response, but let's have a quick start with what happened. And yeah, it is what the hell just happened. I think the headline that everyone's going to be talking about in the fantasy community is, of course, going to be the Dolphins' performance, 70 points. But more importantly, where were those running backs still last week? Mostert with 45 points, A.K.A. with more than 50 points. The Dolphins have arrived, and no matter how much you think the Broncos stunk, you really want a piece of this offense week in, week out. I mean, 4 of the top 10 scorers in PPR format were Dolphins. You've got A.K.A. Who came top. You've got Mostert not far behind. Tyreek Hill was number 3 wide receiver, and Tua was the number 2 QB as well. Absolutely crazy. And I saw a stat that said if you had a team of only Miami players, you would have scored more than 200 in PPR. It was crazy because I thought they might struggle a little bit. I thought Tyreek Hill would do great, and I predicted that with Jalen Waddle out, but it ended up being an absolute rout and an amazing team performance. I think the Dolphins should be very proud of themselves, and go watch the game because more than anything I was impressed by pre-snap motion. Mike McDaniel's absolutely schooled Sean Payton there, and I think they should be very proud of themselves. I think also you want a piece of the Chargers offense, and I think I've been talking about this for a while. They're going to get into close games. It's going to be lots of one-score games. They're going to charge at themselves occasionally, but occasionally they will come out good. And you had Keenan Allen, who got like 180 yards or something. They were at the start. The Vikings were just inviting pressure and letting him dink and dunk. It was crazy. So they were just taking it. That's why Allen shot off to a 30-point head start. He scored a touchdown throwing as well. He scored a 50-yard touchdown to Mike Evans, which meant, I'll open back the curtain a little bit. I have suffered in Dynasty because I went up against Keenan Allen and and Justin Jefferson this week. I suffered a lot. I went up against a team who absolutely destroyed me. But even though I had the second highest scoring points, I came up against the first. It's one of those that I was always never really going to win. But I do think something that did jump out to me outside of knowing that this was going to be a crazy game with 2 really porous defences was that Donald Parham is, in fact, an end zone threat. He didn't get much opportunity in week 3, but in week 2 he proved that, and in this week he did as well. He only got a couple more targets than normal, but end zone twice, I think. He scored 1 touchdown. I think he was targeted in the end zone elsewhere. I like the upside of that, and that's something that I'm going to take away. You want a piece of this Chargers offense, and Donald Parham is probably the only one that's worthwhile or available for you to get. I think it's also been proved that Davante Adams is matchup and QB proof, and we'll come back to that in a little bit. He had another 42-plus point game. It was crazy in a game that they lost as well. It shows that he's just so good. I feel like in the QB world, we learned a lot as well. I feel like CJ Stroud wasn't as bad as all that. The same with Josh Dobbs, turning over the Dallas defense. I've told you to avoid Josh Dobbs. He didn't do great, but he didn't do badly. And the run game in Arizona, where did that come from? James Conner doing business, I think. I think Dak and Trevor Lawrence also disappointed, but I think you know what? I can't read them. I feel like their teams have such high confidence in them, but I never see it week on week. It's a bit of a strange dichotomy there. It's probably also time to say goodbye to Justin Fields. I was a Justin Fields hoper. I never saw this 5th round value in him, but I had him in a couple of places, and I have him as a 15th round keeper in my home league of record. I'm thinking he needs to be dumped, and I'm going to be looking for opportunities elsewhere and guys to pick up instead of him. In the running back world, I feel like the Colts proved they don't need Jonathan Taylor. So I would expect there to be a trade on the cards very soon as he becomes eligible to play. Not this week, but the next week. If they're on, if they're available for waivers, go get him. He's available in 5% of leagues still. I think he's a must buy, especially if there are other teams who are desperately in need of running back help. Elsewhere, you could even see the Chargers go for them. I think that could be interesting if Eckler is out for any longer. I do, however, think the Saints need Kamara back. They were definitely struggling in the run game, and especially when Derek Carr went off injured, which is a real shame. Derek Carr was poised for a very good game, as I predicted, but unfortunately the injury monster comes out to haunt us all. But running back in general is highly unpredictable. I think despite having an absolute rout of the Commanders, it's really weird saying it. Commanders? I don't know. It's just how us Brits say it. But James Cook was not him. He was not trusted. Josh Allen is still a primary running back threat, and they still just throw it. And there's also been disappointing performances from Josh Jacobs, Bijan Robinson, and Gibbs, all scoring around the 10, 11 points mark, and a historically bad performance for Derrick Henry. It's just very unpredictable, and I pride myself on being able to read running backs, and it's part of the game that I study a little bit. But I will admit that I was incredibly wrong about Kenneth Walker. 30 plus points this week. I thought Zach Charbonnet would be the guy, but you know what? Pete Carroll does Pete Carroll things, and I think he just wants to prove me wrong. I think it's a personal vendetta now. I would be selling your shares of Drake London and Kyle Pitts. And you know what? I'm thinking about doing an episode where I talk about buys and sells. Maybe that's next week's preview show. We look at about players who you can drop now. And I've been calling for a while that Kyle Pitts is not worth it. The tight end position is a dumpster fire. I think Drake London goes along with that because it's just not a productive offense that they've got over there. But in tight end world, Sam Laporta should be a thing still for at least for the next 3 weeks. We'll see how Jameson Williams coming in affects that. But yeah, I talk about rookie tight ends not being worth it. He has had 18 catches in the last 3 games. He got his first touchdown. He won me a week elsewhere, so really happy with that. And finally, on the tight end train here, forgive me in advance, but Travis Kelce never draws a blank space. He'll feel 22 forever, and there's no bad blood as he shakes off his week 1 injury. I mean, come on, guys, look what you made me do. I knew you were trouble. Please don't blame me for all the Taylor Swift puns. It's karma for not believing in the Chiefs' passing attack. I'm just saying it like I see it. I'm not the man. I'm just the anti-hero that this love story really needs. Kelce is mine, so you better be ready for it if you come against me in week 4. I'm very sorry for that. I thought everyone has been making really, really simple puns about Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce obviously went off this week. That's why I wanted to include him here. But obviously T Swift, he becomes the latest in a long line of men succumbing to her whimsy, you know what I mean, her ways. God, that sounds really weird. I don't know what I'm trying to say here. But if you can work out how many song puns I included in that little monologue there, then you know what, I'll send you some stickers. Put it down in the comments or send me a DM. And if you get it right, I will be announcing the winner next week. So yeah, what the hell just happened? A lot just happened. I still feel like I'm reeling from it. It was, I'm less than 12 hours removed from the situation here, but that's why we do this early. We're trying to get waivers out. So let's move on to waivers themselves. We'll take a quick break and we'll join on the other side. Right, welcome back. Let's get to it. Week 4 waivers is interesting because in week 3, we think we know things, and I'll be honest, I didn't hit on everyone on week 3, and this is where we sit in waivers world. If you're operating your team in the waivers market, it's going to be incredibly difficult to get consistent performances. You're probably looking at, if you're looking at QBs, you're looking at a QB 3/4. If you're looking at wide receivers, you're looking at a 3/4. If you're looking at running backs, you're looking at potentially injury cover, and tight ends, well, tight ends are just rubbish. I didn't hit on everyone, but last week I did hit on Jordan Love, did hit on Zach Moss. Really happy about that. Gus would have had a good performance had he not been injured, but that's just that team. They just get injured all the time, and I should know this already. But let's look at some guys that we think are going to have a decent upside and a decent range of outcomes this coming week. As always, we try and get one from every position. I focus a bit more on wide receivers this time because there's just more options there. But we'll talk around some guys, and you'll see it on the posts coming out in the next day or so, that I've highlighted 6 guys that I think are more available in most leagues. Actually, one of them is much more available than I put down here. I put down 66%. He's 99% available, and we'll get onto that in a minute. But I think massive upside there. But these are guys who are available in more than 50% of leagues, and I think have a range of outcomes that I think are suitable. Maybe not for this week, but for weeks moving forward. I'll give you reasons why. And we'll talk around some other players as well. But we'll start off with the headline guy. We always do. QB, I'm going to look at Jimmy G. Mentioned in the opening there that Devontae Adams is matchup and QB proof. He also elevates QBs as well. I think he's elevating Jimmy G from being just a standard guy to being able to have someone he can throw to is boosting him up. He had 2 interceptions, maybe 3 interceptions this week. I can't remember, but he still scored 20 points. So you know what? It's a worthwhile option. He is available in 87% of leagues. He could be a rental, going up against a Chargers team who is continuing to letting the pass attack run riot, and I think they'll get into a close game, even though the Raiders aren't looking fantastic. The Chargers may be the better team. I think it'll be close regardless in an AFC West matchup. I'm really liking Jimmy G this week against a squinty pass D, and I might even be looking at him above players like Justin Fields, who I did draft reasonably high, or who was drafted. Jimmy G was probably not drafted for most of you, especially going into this year when he was meant to be injured as well. So I think he's come up good. There are other players at QB that I would recommend as well. Russ, I think, going up against Chicago this week could be worth a rental. He's available in 33% of the league, so he's not going to be a highlight player. But even though he played on a bad team, he did well. And that's why I like about Russ. I think you should be interested in him coming up again this week. So take a look in your league, see if he's available, because he played well despite the stats. He was let down by his team, but I think he has something left in the tank still. Running back, it was difficult, and there was a couple of names I've mentioned before. Jonathan Taylor is 5% available. If no one in your league has picked him up, pick him up. Kamara is 8% available. Again, if no one stashed him or you've got IR rules that don't allow it, he's 8% available. Go get him as well. I think both of those guys will have a high upside moving forwards. I could have looked at Ty J. Spears. He didn't play that great, but he outsnapped Henry, and there might be a change in the guard, but he's 85% available. But the guy I'm rooting for here, obviously, is a big no-brainer. Devon A.K.A, 230 yards last week, 4 touchdowns this week. What else? 50 plus points. We've already talked about it. It's a big duh. He might not have those performances week in, week out, and he'll have down weeks, but I think it shows that he's got a level of talent in that offensive scheme that will will serve him well moving forward. So he's 85% available. Go and get him. That's enough said. Let's move on to wide receivers, and we've got 3 wide receivers. Which, by the way, we're running through these pretty quick because we try and get in and out and make sure you guys can get your information quickly. This is the shortest episode. We'll do a bit more deep dive into in other episodes, and I'm thinking about doing an extra episode this week for Saturday as well. But let's start with the headline guy, 94% available, Calvin Austin, and I'm going to admit I was wrong. There, said it. I was wrong. Calvin Austin, he's like a bad rash. He's not going away. He seems to be a favourite of Tomlin. And because of that, he's getting opportunity. And with Deontay Johnson out, I think, a minimum of 2 more weeks, he's going to continue getting opportunity as well. So he is someone that I really like moving forward. As a wide receiver 3/4 flex play stash kind of guy, but he could give you weeks, especially as we're coming into week 5 in a couple of weeks, where you're going to have a lot of major players on bye weeks, and we'll go over that next week in a bit more detail as well. Elsewhere, you've got Romeo Dobbs. This is a guy I've talked about in the past, but I haven't pulled the trigger on. He's 73% available. He's going up against Detroit. Squishy D. Well, you would hope it's Squishy D, although Atlanta couldn't break it this week. I think it was just a bit of a weird game. But Detroit don't have everything figured out yet, and I think Green Bay are still a fantastic setup. They're well coached. Jordan Love has come good as well. I really like that. And when Jordan Love is playing from behind, Dobbs on tape seems to be the guy they go for. I think he got 5 receptions for 70 plus yards. He got a touchdown as well, but he seems a go-to, and he always seems open. If not the most open, I think the most open at the moment is Jaden Reed, but I think I prefer Romeo Dobbs' upside in the end zone as well. So, and he does seem to be a favoured target, so I would be looking at him. I think it was 18 points this week, and he probably could have had more as well. I think he was stopped in the end zone, or I think he maybe just got called out for a penalty. I can't remember, but either way, I think he's going to be useful. 73% available. I'd pick up a little claim for him. Maybe not use too much of your fab if you're running on fab at the moment. Last wide receiver we're going to talk about before we get on to the dreaded tight end market is going to be Marvin Mims. He's a burner. He's had 2 good weeks already, and I think I've decided, yeah, he's here to stay, and he might be a bit of a draft gem for the Broncos, who are not doing great and are definitely suffering. I know they were throwing away the game a little bit, and Russ was chasing it with big throws, but it seems to me that Sutton seems to be the alpha for now, while Jerry Jeudy is building up his volume, coming back into their passing offense. They do seem to be pass first, which is good, which I like. Which I don't like for Javonte Williams. I think he might be a bit of a write-off, and I might be shelling some of my shares of him, seeming especially now that they are chasing the game more often than not. But Marvin Mims seems to be the guy who is the mismatch. If you're guarding Sutton, who has a fumble problem apparently, even though he scored great points this week, and you're guarding Jerry Jeudy, who is the best route runner in that team, you've got Marvin Mims running these go routes, and it's been great. And he's going up against this weak Chicago secondary, who is A, banged up, and B, rubbish. 91% available. I think this week he's going to be great, and I'm probably going to be starting him if I pick him up this week as well. Seeing as I'm very, very much down against the Chicago defense. And finally, tight end. There's a couple of names out here as well. I've already mentioned Sam Laporta. He's more unavailable than not. 37% available. If you can, go get him. I think it's a no-brainer. I think he's going to be elite for the next couple of weeks at the very least. Jake Ferguson is an interesting one, although I don't like the Dallas offense at the moment. But he seems to be an outlet. I'm not sure who they've got next week, but I remember when writing this up, I didn't want him too much because I think they were going to suffer a lot of pass pressure. I think they're up against New England, and they're going to take away these options. New England are going to play tough defense, so maybe not this week. But I do like Donald Parham. I've said it before, and I went away from him. I recommended him in my first set of waivers. He then whiffed the next week, and then he came back, and I recommended Hunt Henry last week, and he whiffed. So you know what? I'm going to go back to someone who I just like. And tight end is such a dumpster fire at the moment, unless you've got Kelsey unless you've got Kelsey, it is a bit of a dumpster fire. You're not going to be able to score consistent points. So I would rather take the massive upside of end zone targets and goal line opportunities that Parham gives you than a Jake Ferguson who's going to get you 6 or 7 points. You can get 6 or 7 points in a play with Parham. I would much prefer that than the entire game of Jake Ferguson, which is not to score high points. He's there to be an outlet. That's about it. On 5-yard routes. Whereas Parham it could win you a week. I think he's got 13 this week or something like that. Might have got 2 end zone opportunities, but either way, he is massively available. 99.5% available. Go and get him, guys. I think at the very least, if he's your tight end too, he could serve you well in the future. So that's your lot, guys. The key waiver guys I would recommend: Jimmy G, 87%, Devon A. Kane, 85%, go get him, Calvin Austin, 94%, Romeo Dobbs, 73%, Marvin Mims, 91%, and Donald Parham at 99.5%. There are, of course, others available. These are my recommendations based on my biases, but I hope they serve you well. And I hope getting these in early helps you out as well. That's the one advantage of being in the UK. We wake up before they do, and we can start talking about waivers as well. thank you so much for listening. As always, if you want to support the pod, you can follow us on all of the socials at Rugby with Pads. We have memberships and merch available at rugbywithpads.com, or you can just get the merch if you want to go to our Etsy store, store.rugbywithpads.com. Next couple of days, there will be some announcements on merch. I've been promising it for a while, but 2 or 3 new designs. Some are going to be limited for a limited time only. Some are going to be around for a bit longer and become staples. We'll have to see. But if you want to share the love and support this pod as an independent podcast, please go and help out. As always, share the love. Share words. Share on all your channels. Like and subscribe if you can, wherever you're watching or listening to this. Really appreciate your support. And as always, I will see you all on the virtual gridiron.